Now, with the Copenhagen Climate Change Conference just 50 days away, people around the world have been asked what they think, and their opinions have been sent to the environment ministers who will be negotiating the emissions deal. The place chosen to speak on climate change on Britain's behalf, Kettering in Northamptonshire. The government is boasting about big plans to decarbonise the economy, but behind the rhetoric, the survey in Kettering has found a reluctance to pay more for a greener world. Jane Death reports.
The United Nations wants our views for its climate change conference, and it's decided Kettering fits the mould of a typical British town.
Kettering, headquarters of the Research Association of the Shoe and Allied Trades.
In the days before anyone had ever heard of a carbon footprint, Kettering was famous for its shoe factories. The cutters and cobblers made shoes which were sold around the world. When Britain started importing shoes, the industry began to wear out. Today, Kettering's economy is based on distribution. There's just a handful of shoe companies left.
I've been in the shoe trade all my life, but as far as global warming, never knew a thing. Not a thing. Never even thought about it, to tell you the truth.
Retired shoemaker Ray Malin does think about the environment now. He tries to do his bit, keeping it clean. He was one of 100 people in the town presented with evidence of climate change, and he's convinced the need for a global deal on cutting carbon emissions is urgent.
I want people to look at their children and at their grandchildren and think, what sort of world are we going to leave you? We've done the dirty work, and we've got to leave it for the kids to clean it up. It's not right. We've got to do something now.
In 38 countries, people said they wanted their governments to push for a much more radical climate deal in Copenhagen. In Kettering, 54% want a global deal that keeps the rise in the Earth's temperature below 2 degrees. And 87% want Britain to cut carbon emissions by more than the target of 20% by 2020. They want a cut of more like 40%. Kettering is trying to cut its carbon footprint. This wind farm supplies a quarter of the homes in the town. But this survey highlights the government's basic problem. People here want it to push for much tougher cuts in emissions. But when asked what responsibility they were personally prepared to take, people were much more reluctant to change their lifestyles than in other countries. People in the Netherlands said they'd already started saving energy.
I have a water saving system in my bathroom, and now I don't use as much water as I used to do.
I make sure that my family doesn't shower for more than 5 minutes, each person.
The difference between other countries' attitudes and our own was most obvious when people were asked, should the price of fossil fuels be increased? 45% of those in Kettering voted no. In the rest of the world, on average, only 20% of people objected to the idea. In developing countries where the effects of climate change are being felt more acutely, they wanted everyone to pay more, themselves included. In Brazil, 83% of people agreed the price of fossil fuels should go up. In Malawi, 70% said we should be paying more.
I've only got so much pension, and if they keep putting things up and up and up, my pension ain't going to see. So then I'll have to go to the council and say, I can't afford to live.
Janet Harris also voted no to increased green taxes. She's running her own business from home and says at the moment paying out to protect the environment doesn't add up.
You haven't got a lot of money already. We already have sort of gas and electric prices that have gone up by 40% over the last year. And we're trying to hold on to as much money as we can. Although we want to improve the climate, we want to also hold on to our money.
But what about industry? Knights of Old says it's becoming greener because market forces dictate it. Fuel is so expensive the company needs to squeeze every last mile out of the tank. It's buying more aerodynamic trucks and training everyone to drive economically. It means they're using 10% less fuel. The company's against higher fuel prices, but does agree with the idea of a pay-as-you-drive scheme.
By putting up the price of fuel, it's a very blunt mechanism. By road pricing, i.e. we pay by the kilometre that we run, or the mile that we run, empty or loaded, then it forces companies to be efficient, that they have their vehicles occupied or full all the time. So, in other words, if you're efficient and you have your trucks full all the time, you should make a profit.
But the consultation in Kettering has shown people are sceptical that they'll profit from more environmental taxes. They want action on a grand scale, but are reluctant to pay for it. The government will have to win people's trust before they'll put their money and energy into a green revolution. Jane Death, Channel 4 News, Kettering.